Hello everyone, and welcome back to this retrospective series on the legions and their Primarchs. I am the Dark Light Emissary, and I am guiding you through a brief description and retrospective on each of the legions and their Primarchs. And this episode is on the 16th Legion, the Luna Wolves, or Sons of Horus Legion, and their Primarch, Lupercal, Horus, or as he's known later as, the War Master. And so this legion probably is needing a less, introduction than the rest. They are one of the most well-known legions in the entire setting because Horus bears the title for the entire 30k era for the Horus Heresy series of books, and what broke up the Imperium eventually into what we see in 40k. So to give a brief description of this legion, the Sons of Horus are a legion that were at the height of the Great Crusade, a very aggressive but controlled aggressive legion. They weren't like the World Eaters or like the Blood Angels when they let loose with the Red Thirst. What sets apart the Sons of Horus is they were very aggressive, but they were aggressive like an entire tier 1 elite force would be. The Sons of Horus had a technique that they employed greatly with their legion called the spear tip of the spear, go for the throat, knockout command, and the rest will fall like dominoes. And they used this to great effect throughout the Great Crusade era. Now, one of the unique things about this legion is that they were with the Emperor the longest in terms of just like strength, and then Horus was the first Primarch found by the Emperor. So Horus spent about 30 years with the Emperor before another Primarch was found, and his sons, as the Luna Wolves back then, were gaining a lot of notoriety and fame along with their Primarch by serving directly with the Emperor in the most continuous long-term service. So they had that going for them. And Horus himself was just an exemplar of a Primarch. He wasn't, I would say he was not considered the best warrior or the best tactician or the best of any of those things, but he was the most well-rounded Primarch. He was really good at anything he put his mind to, and one of the hardest things to do as a Primarch was to be very diplomatic with all of his brothers. He was basically respected and liked by every other Primarch, which, as we've talked about in previous episodes, doesn't happen all the time with some of the Primarchs. Some of the Primarchs really do not like each other and don't really leave room for any forgiveness in that front. Horus was able to bridge those gaps, and that is why later on the Emperor made Horus the War Master over all of the legions and other military forces of the Great Crusade, because the Emperor knew that Horus was able to, mend any problems with legions working together. He was able to convince legions to, look past differences and fight together. He was a ultimate diplomat in that way. And of course, this doesn't last for Horus. The Wordbearers Legion in Lorgar, which we'll talk about, I believe they are next. I believe they are the 17th without looking at anything. They had been corrupted by chaos some years earlier, and they were starting their plans, and they targeted Horus to help bring about a schism in the Imperium. And Horus was eventually lured into a trap, and he was poisoned by a chaos blade that was aligned to Nurgle. And after that happened, Horus was convinced, tricked by the Chaos Gods, that the Emperor was going to, forget him, forget all the Primarchs, and ascend to become a god. And basically, the Chaos Gods showed him a future of 40k, where if he betrayed the Emperor, that would come to pass. But of course, they did not show that part of it. They were selective in what they showed him. So Horus, after being given these visions, he did not enact any plans for a while. He acted normal for a while, kept, doing compliances and stuff, but he started being a bit more violent, and like there was an incident with a faction with a world called, or a solar system even, called the Technocracy, or they were the Aratian Technocracy. I'm not looking it up, but basically they were a solar system with a functional standard template construct, which STCs are. There's no fully functional ones, and this society had one. Horus started a war with them completely unnecessarily, and that was like the first sign that something was wrong with Horus. And so going back to the Legion a bit, one of the unique things also about this Legion is Horus had a council called the Mournival, which was made up of 4 members, and they were often his inner circle. They were basically 4 picked captains that were considered senior captains of the Legion that were his advisors, and he wanted, the good and the bad suggestions from them. Horus, pre-Heresy, is definitely at the top of my list for one of the Primarchs that I would want to work for, because Horus did not just treat his men like they were, cannon fodder. He didn't treat Space Marines like they were just, bolters shooting at things. He really saw the value in his men and tried to employ them in the best ways possible. And he, wasn't like Perturabo, who would execute you for disagreeing with him. Just horrible things like that. Horus really valued dissenting opinion as much as acknowledging, it's a good plan as well. And I really respect that about him during the Great Crusade era. You've got some really well-known characters from this Legion. Loken, Garviel Loken is his full name, one of the captains, and everyone's favorite from 40k, right? Abaddon. Ezekiel Abaddon, the first captain of this Legion, wearing all black armor, leading the first company of the Sons of Horus called the Justaran Terminators. If you know anything about Abaddon at all, he is considered one of the best warriors of the 30k era, and one of its better leaders as well. Horus really, really liked Abaddon, and Abaddon loved Horus. Abaddon adored Horus. So did most of the Sons of Horus did. That's something like most legions had a good relationship with the Primarchs, with the exceptions of a few. But there was some distrust sometimes between legions and their Primarchs. But with the Sons of Horus and his legion, Horus was absolutely loved and seen as an exemplar, and Horus loved his men as well, I believe. Which just brings so much tragedy to the eventual Horus Heresy. What was lost was one of the best minds that the Imperium had. The Emperor lost one of his favored sons, and as the Heresy progresses, Horus, he's spending so much time trying to manage this rebellion. An interesting thing about Horus and the Sons of Horus is, for fighting against the Imperium and rebelling against them, they did not do it because they loved chaos or wanted to worship it. That was Lorgar and the Wordbearers' whole deal. They wanted to enlighten humanity with, the great truth of the primordial annihilator, worship them, and for a long time, Horus was like, the Chaos Gods are trash. All this magic stuff is nonsense. Lorgar, why do I have to do this stuff? This seems like savage nonsense to me. And Lorgar would be like, hey, the symbology matters, just trust me on this. And so Horus did, for the most part. But Horus, Abaddon, many of the men in this legion were very skeptical of chaos for a very long time. Chaos, being pernicious and corrupting as it is, seeped its way into this legion like something seeping into the joints of armor. But I would not say that for at least a long time. The Sons of Horus were not really chaos worshippers. They wanted to topple the Emperor more so, and they thought they could use chaos as a tool without it really changing anything about them. But they were completely wrong about that, as we see later on. Likewise, this legion was one of those legions that sent its loyalists down to Istvan III and purged them from the rest of the legion. it was a few thousand loyalists, and Loken led, the Luna Wolves against their former brothers. Loken and Tarek Torgadon, one of the other members of the Mournival, were two of the loyalist captains and their forces sent down to eventually fight and die on Isstvan 3. Now, Loken somehow survives that whole situation, and very long story short, he ends up as a knight errant of Malkador the Sigillite. Now, I won't really get into that much, but Loken, plays a important part about, the lost soul of this legion. In fact, some of the Sons of Horus that see him later on basically consider him a ghost coming back to take vengeance on them for what they did to the loyalists, which I find funny. Loken basically is like, yep, I'm a ghost. I'm here to kick your butt. And I just appreciate that. It's a bit poetic there when that happens. But anyway, so the Sons of Horus, for a long time, they continue onwards, pressing towards Terra, gathering forces to them to, bring against the Emperor. And the next major change for Horus happens when he learns about a world called Molech. And Molech has a portal into the warp on it. And here's a very interesting note. Horus has with him at this point Fulgrim, and Fulgrim is a demon prince of Slaanesh at this point. And Fulgrim had been with the Emperor, who had visited Molech and this warp gate sometime during the Great Crusade or even before it. Fulgrim, Horus, and I think one other Primarch was with the Emperor at the time. And the Emperor locked their minds from remembering about Molech other than the world itself. And Horus is like, Fulgrim, I want you to try to remember that period of time. And Fulgrim's like, well, I remember this world, but wow, you're right, I can't remember. If I try to remember, I can't remember. And keep in mind, Fulgrim is not just a Primarch anymore. He's completely been changed into a child of the warp, a prince to a chaos god, and not even Slaanesh can unblock this memory block. Just interesting. Just shows the power of the Emperor. He's able to lock down your mind, and even when you change your very structure of your very being from an atomic level, you still cannot, you're made of unreality matter from a different dimension where time doesn't matter, and the Emperor still makes it so you can't remember something of your past. I just find that interesting. So Horus assaults this world to get to that warp portal. He knows it's something important, and he goes there, and he goes into this portal, and he immediately runs into a demon that starts talking to him about the futures and, waxing poetic about, stuff like demons can do. And I just find it funny. Horus's response to that is to grab the demon by the neck and tell him to shut up. Again, Horus, for a long time, had no patience for demons, for the chaos gods. He really did not care about them. And Molech kind of changed that. It's said that Horus spent, possible millennia in the warp, leading battles and wars with the chaos gods. And when Horus leaves that warp portal again, he hasn't been gone very long in the real time, but something fundamentally changed about Horus at that point. More so than when he was struck down by the blade on Davin earlier on. Horus now is closer to the Emperor in power level and wisdom. So the Emperor also went through this portal, and we aren't quite sure what he took from the Chaos Gods in this portal. There's a lot of speculation there that I won't get into in this video, but some people think it might have been whatever, secret Promethean flame is used to fuel the Primarchs, because the Primarchs are, at their core, some part of them is warp related, and maybe he stole that from the Chaos Gods, or something else that elevated his power level to near godlike power levels. We aren't sure, but Horus definitely gained from it, and this is the Horus that starts aligning closer and closer with the Chaos Gods. This is when his battleship, the Vengeful Spirit, starts really shifting and changing towards like getting chaos corrupted itself to its very core. Now, this entire time, though, it's interesting to note that, like people who stayed, 100% loyal, like Abaddon to Horus, Abaddon still, for the longest time, did not care at all about chaos. Up into the Siege of Terra, Abaddon's like, chaos sucks, I hate it. Abaddon seems to have, this is kind of an irony, Abaddon seems to kind of have a inbuilt immunity to chaos's effects, and we see that during the Siege of Terra when Mortarion arrives to the court of the Lupercal, and Mortarion at this point is now elevated to a demon prince of Nurgle, and wherever he goes, there's basically like a plague aura around him, being a demon prince of a plague god. That makes sense. Several Terminators in the room, like instantly convulse and fall to the floor, dying from whatever the plague Mortarion brought into the room just by visiting to have court with his with the War Master. And Abaddon is standing next to the War Master and bears no ill effects, and it's written that Abaddon was shaken to his very core by the fact that he didn't have anything happen to him. He didn't show it at all, because that's kind of Abaddon's whole thing. He's very good at not showing what he wants to show emotionally. But I just find that curious that they bring that up, that Abaddon not only did not care about chaos, but it didn't seem to corrupt him, not on a physical level at least. Spiritually, who knows? It's not really said much. But anyway, I digress. Again, trying not to ramble with this stuff. I could talk a lot longer in these than I am trying to. So during the Siege of Terra, a few important things happen to this legion. Abaddon leads a failed gambit and gets a lot of the elite forces destroyed of the Sons of Horus. Most of the legion still stays intact and is one of the main forces, pushing through the entire siege. And after Horus's defeat at the hands of the Emperor, Abaddon stages a huge counterattack to make sure they get Horus's corpse before they evacuate and leave the planet. And then they make their way into the Eye of Terror, eventually, during the Scouring era. Now, the Sons of Horus, for a while, stayed together as a legion. However, there was some breakups and, infighting over, who was to blame during the, for the failure of the Horus Heresy. However, Abaddon basically abandoned the legion with the Vengeful Spirit pretty early on in this, and he wasn't seen for a while. Eventually, some members of the Legion found him again, and by that point, Abaddon had been reflecting a lot on things and decided, what, we're going to go after the Imperium again. We're going to, go after them just to defeat them. And again, Abaddon does not seem to be... Abaddon, at this point, basically becomes the main leader of the Chaos Forces. But again, Abaddon seems unchanged from the time of the Heresy, physically at least. Now, power level, he's gained some power and given some, a lot of political clout, being, the main leader of many crusades against the Imperium over the next 10,000 years. But Abaddon himself, interestingly, physically at least, it does not look much different from his Great Crusade era self, which I, again, find just interesting. And so this legion renames itself to the Black Legion under Abaddon, and that's to expunge, Abaddon sees Horus as the main, failure, and he loved Horus so much that he was very hurt by his death, and so he expunged Horus, memory from the Legion, renamed it the Black Legion, and they are the Legion that most focuses on wanting to topple, the false emperor, along with the Word Bearers. I'd say those two legions are the main ones that want to see the Imperium dead. And curiously, both of these legions are probably some of the least unchanged from the time of the Heresy in terms of overall style and the way they are. And we'll talk a bit more about, again, the Word Bearers, how they're like that. Up to 40k, they're pretty much nearly the same as they have been for 10,000 years. And so that's really it for them. They are a pretty powerful, continuously growing legion in the 40k era. They recruit and allow in pretty much any warband from, other traitor legions and, former loyalist chapters that fall away can join the Black Legion. They basically let you join if you have a bone to pick with the Imperium. That's kind of their whole thing. And, Abaddon wants to see what he sees as, all of his the example of all his failures in the Imperium toppled. And that's kind of their goal in 40k. So that is really this Legion and Horus in a nutshell. Horus has no chance of coming back in 40k. His soul was obliterated by the Emperor on a psychic level, so no Horus in the future. There was a clone made of him by Fabius Bile of the Emperor's Children made a clone of Horus, but it was imperfect, and Abaddon actually slew that clone personally. But yeah, he has no chance of coming back. He's one of the true dead Primarchs in the setting, and this Legion, though, is very much alive and wanting some payback, and that's why they've been leading the Black Crusades for the last 10,000 years. So anyway, that's about it. So as always, bring your light into the dark places. I will see you in the next one. The next one will be the 17th Legion. I don't think I'm going to be putting any videos out for this weekend. I just don't have the time to be making videos for the weekend time. So next Monday will be in the evening, probably a video about the Word Bearers Legion and Lorgar and everyone's favorite heretic, Erebus. So going to be fun to talk about them next. So have a great day or night wherever you are. We will talk to you in the next one and see you there. Thank you.